The council chamber buzzed with chatter as the galactic representatives convened, their languages overlapping in a chaotic symphony of diplomacy. At the center of it all sat the human ambassador, a figure of calm amidst the storm. His tone was measured, his words deliberate, as he addressed the assembled leaders. "We value peace above all else," he began, his gaze sweeping across the room. "But I must remind you once again. Please don't make us mad." A ripple of amusement passed through the crowd. The ambassador's warning had become something of a running joke among the older civilizations. What threat could these humans, a relatively new and unimpressive species, possibly pose? Their technology, while advanced, wasn't unique. Their armies, though disciplined, were dwarfed by the might of empires like the Draxan. The Draxan leader, a hulking figure encased in ceremonial armor, sneered. "Your constant warnings are tiresome, human. Do you think your kind could stand against us?" The human ambassador didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he offered a faint smile. "We've never claimed to be stronger than you. We've only ever asked for understanding. Please, don't make us mad." The chamber erupted in laughter, the Draxan leader's voice rising above the rest. "You'll regret showing such weakness." In the days that followed, the Draxan fleet mobilized with terrifying efficiency. Their target, a small human colony on the edge of explored space, far from Earth and the central trade routes. To them, it was a calculated move, a show of strength meant to crush humanity's pride without provoking a full-scale war. When news of the impending attack reached Earth, there was no panic, no fiery rhetoric. The response from humanity's leaders was as subdued as it was cryptic. "We hope they'll listen," one official stated in a rare public address. "We hope they'll remember that we warned them." The Draxan assault began at dawn, their fleet descending on the colony like a storm. Resistance was non-existent. Human ships fled or were destroyed with ease, and the colony's governor surrendered before a single Draxan soldier set foot on the surface. Reports from the battlefield painted a humiliating picture. Humans were compliant, almost indifferent, as they were rounded up and detained. The Draxan commander mocked their cowardice in an address broadcast across the galaxy, boasting that humanity's days as an independent power were over. In the council chamber, the Draxan leader stood triumphant, his voice dripping with derision. "This is the species that dared to warn us? They're nothing but cowards." The human ambassador, still calm, only repeated his earlier words. "Please don't make us mad." His tone, however, had changed. It was no longer a plea. It was a quiet acknowledgement of inevitability. For the first time, the laughter in the chamber faltered. Something in the ambassador's eyes, something cold, unyielding, sent a shiver through even the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The Draxan fleet hung in orbit above the human colony, its massive ships casting shadows over the landscape below. On the surface, the air was tense but eerily quiet. The humans had surrendered without a fight, their hands raised in submission as the Draxan soldiers rounded them up. There were no cries for mercy, no desperate acts of defiance. Only a strange, collective silence that unsettled the invaders. The Draxan commander strode through the streets, inspecting the subdued population. "Pathetic," he muttered to his second-in-command. "They crumble at the first sign of strength. This is what they call resilience." One of the captives, an older human, looked up at the commander with an expression that was neither fearful nor defiant. His voice was calm, almost resigned. "We asked you not to do this. You won't like what comes next." The commander laughed, dismissing the comment as the rambling of a defeated species. "What comes next? More surrender? You're in no position to threaten anyone." The human said nothing more, his gaze fixed on the ground. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, whispers of the attack began to spread. News of the colony's fall reached the Galactic Council, where representatives from various species exchanged amused remarks. "The humans finally got a taste of reality," one remarked. Their naive diplomacy was bound to fail eventually, but not everyone was laughing. Among the council's senior members, there were those who had observed humanity's behavior closely over the years. Their absence of resistance, their repeated warnings, These weren't signs of weakness. They were something else entirely. In a remote system, far from the Draxan invasion, human ships began to mobilize. Small, sleek vessels moved with precision, their designs unfamiliar to even the most advanced civilizations. Communications channels buzzed with cryptic messages, their content hidden behind layers of encryption. On the Draxan-occupied colony, the soldiers settled into their new roles as conquerors. They commandeered buildings, dismantled local defenses, and searched for any signs of resistance. But the humans remained disturbingly cooperative, following orders without protest. It was a conquest without bloodshed, without glory, something that left the Draxans deeply unsatisfied. One night, a Draxan patrol stumbled upon an abandoned human facility on the outskirts of the colony. Inside, the walls were lined with strange carvings. Words etched into steel in dozens of human languages repeated the same message over and over. "You made us mad." The patrol reported the discovery, but the commander dismissed it as a meaningless act of defiance. "Let them have their little messages," he said with a smirk. "It changes nothing." But then came the malfunctions. Power grids failed without warning. Communication lines went silent. Entire squads of Draxan soldiers vanished during patrols, their equipment left behind without a trace. What began as isolated incidents quickly spiraled into chaos. By the time the commander realized something was wrong, it was already too late. Far above the colony, hidden in the void of space, a human fleet waited, silent and unseen. The Draxan commander barked orders, his voice rising over the cacophony of alarms echoing through the command center. Monitors flickered with static, reports of system failures pouring in faster than they could be addressed. Entire sections of their fleet's infrastructure were failing without any visible cause. No signs of sabotage, no enemy ships in sight. "This is impossible," he shouted. "Humans don't have this kind of capability." But the Draxans were learning too late that their assumptions about humanity were wrong. Across the colony, chaos erupted. Draxan soldiers found their weapons malfunctioning, their vehicles immobilized. A single drone, no larger than a bird, slipped unnoticed through the city. Moments later, entire barracks erupted in explosions, their occupants caught off guard. In orbit, the Draxan fleet fared no better. Ships powered by advanced fusion cores suddenly went dark, their systems rendered inert. Crews scrambled to regain control, only to find their commands overridden by an unknown force. One officer stared at his screen in horror as human symbols scrolled across it. "We warned you." Then the human ships arrived. They didn't look like the bulky cruisers or sleek fighters of other species. These were angular, almost predatory in design, their hulls coated in matte black that seemed to absorb light. They didn't announce their presence with a show of force or grand speeches. They simply appeared, silent and efficient, moving into formation around the crippled Draxan fleet. The first strike was surgical. A human ship targeted the Draxan flagship with a precision weapon that bypassed its shields entirely, slicing through its hull like a scalpel. There was no explosion, no fiery destruction. Just a sudden and complete loss of life support as the ship was left adrift. One by one, the other Draxan ships followed. Some tried to flee, only to find their engines disabled before they could make the jump to hyperspace. Others attempted to fight, launching volleys of plasma and missiles at the human fleet. But the human ships didn't move like conventional vessels. They danced through the battlefield with an eerie grace, anticipating every attack, countering with pinpoint accuracy. On the ground, the Draxan commander's confidence shattered. He watched helplessly as his fleet was dismantled piece by piece. "How?" he whispered to himself. "They were weak. They surrendered." A human voice crackled over the comms, calm and measured. "You mistook our peace for weakness. That was your first mistake. Your second was ignoring our warning." The Draxan forces attempted a desperate counterattack, deploying their remaining weapons against the human ships. But even their most advanced technology couldn't match the humans' precision. Drones swarmed through their ranks, disabling weapons and neutralizing threats with cold efficiency. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The human ships held their positions, silent once more, as the shattered remnants of the Draxan fleet drifted aimlessly in orbit. On the ground, the surviving soldiers surrendered, their weapons falling from shaking hands. For the first time, the Draxans understood the full meaning of humanity's warning. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the last remnants of the Draxan Empire crumbled. News spread quickly, carried by frightened whispers and hastily encrypted transmissions. The once mighty conquerors had been reduced to fractured remnants in less than a month. Their fleets were destroyed, their armies routed, and their leaders either captured or fleeing in disgrace. But humanity did not press for further conquest. Instead, they withdrew their forces as swiftly as they had deployed them. The human ships, still unmarked and enigmatic, vanished into the void, leaving behind only silence and the ruins of what had once been the Draxan Empire. In the Galactic Council, the remaining representatives reconvened. The chamber, once filled with laughter at humanity's warnings, now echoed with nervous murmurs. The human ambassador returned, his calm demeanor unchanged, though the weight of his presence was undeniable. "We warned you," he said simply, his voice carrying across the room without effort. "It was never our wish to resort to violence. But when faced with no other choice, we will defend ourselves." The representatives were too shaken to respond. Some tried to muster apologies, stammering through words of regret. Others remained silent, unsure of how to address the species they had once mocked. The Draxan chair sat empty, a stark reminder of the consequences of underestimating humanity. "We hold no desire for conquest," the ambassador continued, his tone unwavering. "The territories left behind by the Draxan are yours to govern as you see fit. Humanity has no interest in ruling over others. But let this be a lesson to all who think peace is weakness." In the ruins of the Draxan homeworld, survivors sifted through the aftermath. Their towering structures, once symbols of power and dominance, now lay in ruins. Messages scrawled by human forces in their retreat haunted every corner. "We told you not to make us mad," one former Draxan general, now a prisoner in his own city, spoke quietly to a journalist from a neutral species. "We thought they were soft, weak. All the signs were there. And yet, when the time came, they fought like demons. Not for conquest or glory. They fought to end us." Across the galaxy, debates raged. How had humanity, a species that had spent decades advocating for diplomacy and peace, been capable of such devastating force? Theories ranged from secret alliances to hidden technologies, but no consensus could be reached. The humans offered no answers, retreating back to their territories and issuing no further statements. In a broadcast from Earth, humanity's leaders addressed the galactic community one final time. "We have always sought harmony," the message began, the speaker's face unseen but their voice resolute. "But peace does not mean submission. Let the fate of the Draxan serve as a warning. We will not seek war, but we will not suffer aggression. And we will not warn you again." The transmission ended, leaving a galaxy forever changed. Humanity's name, once whispered in ridicule, was now spoken with a mixture of awe and fear. The warning had been clear all along. The galaxy had simply failed to listen.